wanted to just give you quickly some insider tips. This is insider information on success factors for leading this God Owns It All small group. So you see you've got a fill in the blank chart. I want to just give you a couple of things that are helpful. The first insider tip is my story. Just put the words my story. And here's the deal. When people are in your small group, it's going to be important for them to know your story. And so are you in a place that you're able to tell your story? Because what a small group is looking for in a facilitator is not an expert. They're looking for a guide, somebody that locks arms with them and says, I'm here on the journey with you. And I've been through this journey and I'm still in it, in fact. So let me give you a quick way to develop your story, because sometimes when you hear, oh man, I've got to create a testimony, that feels like something I've got to go take a day away and chart it out. You can, in 4 sentences, develop your story, okay? So here's how it goes. I was A, I'm going to give you an example, but I was A, so you just fill in the blank. Then I learned B, so some incident happened that kind of changed my life. Now I am C, so what happened from that change? And then I hope to be D. Okay, so let me give you a quick example with my own story, okay? So in 2008, my husband and I were suddenly and unexpectedly faced with a 75% drop in our income. I was A. Then we had the opportunity to say yes to God on a challenge here at 12 Stone to give a significant amount of money. And we were impacted personally by the message here, and we were hearing God say, you do this in spite of your huge drop in income. And now we're walking in a place that we're not afraid. We are willing to say when things are going well, we know what's happening, and when things are challenged, we know what's happening because of the fact that God walked us through that terribly difficult time. And what we hope to be is encouragers for other people like you in our small group, and we want to walk alongside of you no matter where you are. It took about 30 minutes or less to put that together, because all it is here's what an incident that happened that changed me, here's where I am now, and here's where I want to be. And so I want to encourage you, this is your first insider tip, know your story and be willing to be authentic in sharing it, because you're going to bring people alongside of you in a way that they're begin opening up even that first night. So turn to page 11 in your guide, and let me show you, we've even built in this question to help you get started. So the very first week, page 11, what is the first icebreaker question? What childhood memories or experiences have most influenced your view of giving or money? I led a God Owns It All small group a couple of months ago. We hardly got past that question in our first session. It was such sweet sharing. And we learned, these were people that had known each other sometimes for almost 10 years. And we learned things about each other we had never known before. And in fact, it gave us a greater appreciation for each person in the group because we began to understand that. So this is a very significant question. It allows them to be able to tell their story. Okay? So first insider tip, my story and their story. Second insider tip is what I will say are the 3 most impactful questions. And Ron already set us up here for this one. But I want to ask a question because I want to make sure we kind of all know who we are in the room. First of all, who in this room loves numbers, loves doing budgets and calculations and those kinds of things? All right. Okay. Who in this room would be okay if you didn't have to see a number ever again? Yeah. Okay, so good. This is usually how we're split. So if I could give this one particularly to those of us that love numbers, love balancing things, make sure that the pluses and the minuses all equal. I had an engineer that I trained to be a financial coach. And he came to me one day and he said, okay, I'm having problems with my coachees, my clients. And I said, well, what's the problem? And he said, well, I keep giving them their balanced budget and they keep coming back the next month and it's not right. Now, what's the problem in that coaching? It was his balanced budget. It wasn't theirs. And so for those of us that love money and that love making things go to zero, here's going to be our temptation in this small group. When someone presents a challenge or a problem, what will we probably most likely want to do? we're going to want to fix it, right? And so Ron's already given us the answer, but I want to come back and put a punctuation point on it. The best thing we can do when someone presents us a problem is to ask a question. That's your second insider tip. Ask a question. Now, Ron's already given us the best question. What was that? What would God want you to do? That's number one. What would God want you to do? I'm going to give you two more in case you run out. If you say, what would God want you to do? And they say, well, I don't know, then encourage them to go pray about it. And they come back and they say, well, I think I know, but my spouse doesn't agree. That's your second question. What does your husband or your wife think about that if they're married? What does your husband or wife, or if they're not married, what does your family think about that? So that's your second question. What does God want you to do? And what does your family think about that? And then your third question is, have you ever thought about X? So again, instead of giving advice, you're going to phrase it in the form of a question. So somebody comes to you and they say, you know what, I can't get out of this cycle of credit card debt. I keep paying it off. I use my savings to pay it off, and then something breaks down, and then I have to borrow again. You could say, have you ever thought about getting an emergency fund built up so that you wouldn't have to keep going back to that credit card? Have you ever thought about? Because then that gives them the opportunity to say, well, you know, I have, but I've had a hard time implementing it. Instead of you looking at them and saying, Steve, you got to build an emergency fund. You got to start right now. It's got to be $1,000. How are they going to feel about that advice? I mean, if it were me, I would feel like my mother was talking to me, and I will just tell you that I immediately kind of turn it out. So, have you ever thought about 3 questions? What would God have you do? What does your husband or wife think about it? And then have you ever thought about, and give them just a piece to consider and let them wrestle with it. Got it? So we don't have to have answers. Isn't that cool? All we have to do is have questions. In fact, you can even tell your group, you know what, I don't have answers, but I've got a few questions and I think it'll help guide us along the way. And again, that helps position you be a guide instead of being this expert that's supposed to know everything. I know for me, it brings a lot of relief in my process of doing that. Okay, so I mentioned in those questions, this is your third insider tip for husband-wife alignment. So the question we had was, what does your husband or wife think about that? Okay, well, so what do I do if I get in a situation where those two people are just not agreeing? So let me give you a metaphor. One of the things I really enjoy in working with couples is that it oftentimes helps to give a story or a metaphor that gives them a visual that kind of takes it outside of kind of our personal situation and makes it where it's something that we can all process together. And so when I have a couple that are not necessarily in alignment on these financial issues, I like to actually use the example of a car out of an alignment. So what happens when you've got a car and it gets out of alignment? You start driving down the road, what's the first thing that you kind of feel? Yeah, so your steering wheel gets it's a little bit more effort, to kind of keep there in the lane. Well, if we ignore a car out of alignment, does it ever get better? No. In fact, for sure, what does it do? It gets worse, to the point that you're driving down the road and you feel like you're wrestling a bear, right? And so as you have couples in your group that may be experiencing some level of distress, it may be helpful to use this metaphor that I'm noticing that perhaps some of us are a little bit out of alignment, perhaps like a car. So I want you to have this example to even use if it comes up. I notice we're a little bit out of alignment like a car, and we want to dig into that in this group. We want to help each other be at a place that we get back in alignment as a couple, because we don't want to be at the point that money becomes the thing that's the bear in our marriage and that we're wrestling it. Now, here's another thing that's beautiful about the car alignment that elevates the position of the husband and the wife in this conversation. What view does the right-hand tire of the car have when you're traveling? It's going to have the view of the curb and perhaps the neighborhood and the grass. The right-hand tire does. The left-hand tire may have the view of the lane marker, keeping you in the lane, right? And so it really takes a right-hand view and a left-hand view of that car to get a great picture. You need to have the picture of the curb and you need to have the picture of the lane marker in order to stay in the lanes, right? So in a marriage, you need both perspectives and you need both views. So that's just one example. You may have another metaphor of your own, but I've found that this car alignment metaphor works really, really well with both the husband and the wife to, first of all, see the importance of getting in alignment, and then second of all, beginning to realize that each person's perspective, while different, is super important in keeping the car on the road. Now, let me deal for a minute in this third one still on husband-wife alignment. There may be a time in your group that you see some tension. So what are some ways that you deal with that tension? What are some indications that there are tension? A lot of times you really just have to use your power of observation. Now, sometimes it's obvious because the words come out, right? But typically, before the words come out, you can use your power of observation and see some things like body language, rolling of the eyes. Perhaps one of the spouses not too friendly of a way, grabbing the other's leg and kind of squeezing it. I mean, you start watching that body language and you're going to see there's some tension. Couple of things that you can do. You definitely don't want to put them on the spot by any means, but there are some really subtle things that you can do to help kind of draw this out to see if it's something that just needs to be spoken, or perhaps to indicate whether or not it's something you might need to have a conversation later. The best thing that I've seen in this time when there's a little bit of tension is if you've got one spouse that's really been dominating and saying, whatever it is, they're just dominating the conversation. It's very helpful to perhaps just look at the other spouse and say, hey, I'd like to hear what you have to say about this, because it gives that opportunity to bring some balance. And it may be okay, or it may be that the spouse really isn't in a place that they want to. You don't want to put them on the spot, but you do want to give them an opportunity to speak up. And sometimes it's just a matter of, well, I thought X, and it's not a big deal. If you see that it is a big deal, then I love to, in our small groups, we oftentimes have snack time kind of before and after the conversation. It's like when people come in, we have those few moments for refreshments, but then after, people hang around and talk a little bit. I love to use that time after to maybe just grab them for a second and say, hey, I'm sensing a little tension here. How can I be praying for you? Really not in the middle of the group, but more to the side. So that's husband and wife alignment. And then let me go to our fourth insider tip, and that's personal convictions. Ron touched on this for a moment too, but I want to point out something in your book. This book is a golden tool chest for you, and so these last two tips are associated with your golden tool chest. You will notice, let me just get you started on one page as an example. Go to page 30. So the green pages is where we encourage you to stay as far as your group discussion. But there are some places that I feel like you can go to the white pages and pull out some tools if needed. And so I want to be sure that you're aware that they're there. So on page 30 and 31, you'll see that we've got Ron's personal convictions on the topic. There's guidelines for developing your own personal convictions, and then there's a space for you to have your own. I would say as a small group leader, if you don't have time to do anything other than prepare your green pages and pray about your personal convictions, you'll be much more centered in the time that you spend with your group. And so in each and every lesson, the key to finding these personal conviction pages is that they are the last 2 pages of every lesson in the white pages. But I really want to encourage you, because if you really have clarity on your personal convictions, on the principles that you believe God has placed on your heart from this study of your word, you will be much more confident in asking those questions of the group and knowing where you stand, right? Okay, and so then the fifth one, quickly, I want to take you on a quick tour of some useful tools. So let's say that this couple, or perhaps even just a single person in your group, has been experiencing or indicating some tension in their finances. They may not even be experiencing tension. Perhaps they just say, I want to dig deeper. I'm loving these principles, but I really want to dig deeper. I want to take you to 6 pages of this workbook that literally you could pull out those pages and help somebody through this process. So I want to be sure that you know what tools are embedded back here. If you go to page 45 and 46, the pie diagram, that Ron was mentioning that we do have electronically that we'll make sure we get to you is also built into the book. And so this is the exercise on page 45 and 46 that walks you through building your own pie. And so what I've done in my book, quite frankly, is I've just dog-eared the pages where the practical tools are. It's also in your small group. If you want to give a challenge at the end of the night to say, for those of you that would like to do something this week to prepare for next week, this tool on page 45 and 46 is the way you can work on your own pie diagram. So it's optional. I want to reemphasize what Jeremy and Dan said at the beginning. We don't want to put too much on people. At the same time, especially on this topic, you'll find that there are people that are ready to go further and they're going to say, hey, I want a tool. And so I want to be sure in each lesson you see the tool that's there that could help you. So this is 45 and 46 is where you can do your own pie diagram. Now if you'll go to page 71, you'll find the budgeting tools for the week on Live. So page 71, and what I love about this is the first place I've ever actually seen this, and I get asked the question all the time, how do we compare budgeting tools that are out there? There's mint.com, we could use an Excel spreadsheet, there's all kinds of options. How do we compare those? And Ron and Michael Blue have in this book taken those budgeting solutions and given you clues for if this describes you, this might be the system that you would like to use. So I love the fact that it's customized. You can choose your system. We're not recommending one particular system for budgeting, but it gives them tools to point them in that direction. So if they've chosen to do the Live, Give, Grow pie chart the week before, then moving into getting their budget set up in the week of Live will work really nicely for them. Okay? So now let's go to the third one, and this is on giving. You'll find it on page 93. And you remember Ron talking about the 3 levels of giving, what I would, could, and should give. This is actually a worksheet. If they want to go further in praying and asking the Lord what their commitments for giving should be, this gives them a practical way to work it out here on this page. Okay? Page 114 is your next one for the debt group. And this is, many of you are familiar with the debt snowball, right? So this is the debt snowball exercise. You also can find it online, but it basically gives them the worksheet to be able to go through and do their debt snowball and make a plan for eliminating their debt. All right, and then the last 2 you'll find on page 133 for the grow. It gives them an opportunity to mark where they are on their process of grow through this sequential investing exercise. And again, just a very practical tool to kind of put it in action. And then finally, on page 136 and 137, this is the capstone. It gives them the opportunity to go back to the Live, Give, Grow pie chart and talk about their goals and where they would hope to be. So I know that was a quick breeze through this 5th insider tip. It just takes you the quick tour through the tools that are available to you. But I think if you'll look at these tools and as you prepare for each week, it can be a very practical follow-up step for those that want something that they can do past the small group itself. All right, thank you.